I talk about 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons quite a lot. It is one of my favorite specialty subjects. It's a place of incredible complexity, wonderful storytelling potential, and now, looking back on it, I can enjoy it as a place where every minute I spent memorizing the cross-section of prestige class requirement interactions as worth absolutely dick nothing. I want to talk to you about my favorite book from 3rd edition D&D, and it's not the Tome of Battle. Instead, I want to talk to you about what might be the last book from 3rd edition D&D. The book about how to end 3rd edition D&D. This is about Elder Evils. Content warning. This is a book of horror monsters, things that make the world horrifying and involve discussing horrifying concepts. There's going to feature the undead, Lovecraftian horror, cults, colonialism, climate disaster, malicious superintelligences, cancer, deicide, bugs and spiders and worms, and just so many gross creepy crawlies, and bullying. The tone is meant to be creepy, and I want you to know all about that before we go on. You good? We good? Okay. The toolkit itself. Something I think it's very easy to forget is that tabletop RPGs, especially those with expansions, are made by people with skills. And over the course of making those games with those expansions, those people get better at making them, and the product of those skills shows it. In the case of Elder Evils, those people start with Robert J. Schwalb, along with Jason Bullman, Greg Gordon, James Jacobs, Rhiannon Louv, Michael McTarter, and Anthony Pryor. But it also includes the absolutely sterling work of editors Logan Bonner, Michelle Carter, and Jennifer Clark Wilkes. Even if you're big into 3.5 D&D, you might not recognize any of those names though. This wasn't your Jesse Decker or Ed Greenwood or Bruce Cordell kind of product. It's an example of a book where I think the structure is just correct. There's an introductory chapter about the concept and its execution, about game mechanical pieces necessary to understand the rest of the book, and then the remaining 9 chapters each is a treatment of an Elder Evil. These treatments start by describing the creature in terms of its origin, its goals, the way it affects the world while it's present in it, and then an example set of encounters and story beats for how to use this monster in your game throughout the arc of a campaign. This isn't just a straight-up scary monster book showing off a fancy monster, but instead includes NPCs that make up the spine of the whole plot all the way through the levels. These Elder Evils are in many cases extremely unknowable, and choosing to engage with them shows that there is something wrong with a person. So, this book has to flesh out a collection of people and tell you what's wrong with them. It includes mechanics for the effects of the Elder Evil on the world that don't need to obviously be related until the time is too late to do anything about it, known as their signs. There are multiple dungeon encounters per Elder Evil, and suggested routes for how to engage with them. They're also flexible. You don't have to end the world with a world-shattering battle. The book does make it clear that campaigns against Elder Evils don't have to culminate in a horrible epic confrontation, even though they are built with that horrible epic confrontation just sitting there waiting for someone to use it. They scar the world. There are all sorts of ways the story can end early if the players succeed. This isn't a book about railroading players, but instead about presenting ways that the story can take the next step to get worse. But if your players don't make it worse, if your players get there in time, you're not forced to advance it. Just the fact these Elder Evils exist tells you something about how the world they're in works. They change the rules. They challenge the boundaries of what's safe and what's actually meaningful. The book explains this very clearly. These are things whose very presence in your world changes what the world is about. A lot of settings rely on a very standardized vision of stability, where the gods or archons or something that shows up at the top of the heap, or at least balancing evil enough. Elder Evils throws that into question. Each one of them tells you that there's something in the world that you were relying on that isn't even wrong anymore. And a campaign against them, even if it doesn't feature a grand crescendo of violence in the boss battle the book presents, is still a story where the fact that the Elder Evil was there at all means that now the world is different. The sign, the events, these are world-impacting things. Everyone knows about that time when zombies started exploding, or when boils fell out of the sky and stuck to people's skin. History has happened to you, even as it ended. I think part of what I love about the Elder Evils is that they are high-concept entities. That is, there's a single idea that can be reasonably summarized, and that single idea can then inform all the other elements of the story. The stories around them, and the things they do, and the kinds of things they require in the world can all be pulled in line with that high concept, which makes them easy to integrate with. If you get the thing they're about, it's very easy to see if things you're doing are about the same thing. Atropus. The world-born dead drifts through the gulfs of space, searching for worlds to consume, and when it finds them, erasing all life with its gruesome touch. As the afterbirth of creation, it is committed to unmaking all things. Nothing, not even the gods, can halt its relentless progress. The first Elder Evil we meet is Atropus. Atropus is an evil, undead moon. Moon's cursed, like they say. Atropus has a range of different backstories depending upon the world you're working with. I don't need it to have a specific origin. I think the appearance of an evil moon that starts raising the dead the closer it gets is kind of all you need. And ultimately, Atropus is the very obvious and very evident fear of death. Atropus stuff is about death, the end of all life and replacement with the undead. A world after Atropus has crashed into it is still there, but there is nothing of life to it anymore. It's what happens when Harrowhark Nonagesimus gets drop-shipped onto your planet. Atropus manifests in the world as a stellar event, something that happens on the horizon and creeps towards you over the course of the campaign. I like this a lot because stellar events are exactly the kind of thing where our brains don't handle the timescale very well. You go from thinking, I have all the time in the world, to, oh no, that's happening right now. It's slow, but it is inevitable. You will be shocked at how fast it is when it is arriving. Now, where Atropus changes the world is that once Atropus exists in your universe, it implies that a lot of the rest of the universe is full of dead worlds. Like, what is the chance that this stellar event only has happened to you? That you were the first to deal with it, and that you send it away? Well, you haven't stopped it. It's going to go and happen to someone else. It's going to happen a long time away. It's going to happen somewhere that you don't ever know about. But fundamentally, it's still happening. The end is inevitable. Father Lymic. A mote of alien thought given form and flesh, Father Lymic is not of this world. He dwells in an icy prison, awaiting a time when the world will be right for his coming. As his age of freezing darkness draws near, his brood begins to appear, stalking the wastes in preparation for his reign. If he is released from his prison, the entire world will be covered in a deadly glacier, removed from light and hope for all time. Father Lymic represents a truly difficult thing to do, which is a Lovecraftian horror that is not, strictly speaking, just about racism. Father Lymic is a Lovecraftian entity from another universe that reacts wrong to the rules of our universe. As an example, sunlight, when it hits Father Lymic, makes him grow ice. That's not how ice works. That's not what it's for. That's not what sunlight does. But that doesn't matter, because that's how it works for Father Lymic. This means that as long as the sun is happening, Father Lymic is trapped in ice and will continue to be trapped in ice. But Father Lymic is something that isn't correct. He does not work within the rules of the universe that you are used to. So knowing about him damages your understanding of the universe. You can't rely on things that you thought were normal. Furthermore, Father Lymic exists in a world where people's beliefs shape the world. So, as he uses his psychic presence to draw people up the mountain, to teach them about himself, to drive them in a way mad, well, then there are people who will think like he wants them to think. More and more of them will start to affect the world with their beliefs. And you and your fellow adventurers, you all know why the sun rises and sets. You know that the sun doesn't create ice. But Father Lymic's brood don't agree. And when there's enough of them, they're right. Father Lymic doesn't stop when he's defeated. He preys on people's desire to be helpful. Things that you encounter in the storms near the mountains, where people want to be helpful and pro-social, and where knowing things is valuable. Those are the things that Father Lymic uses to draw you close to his glacier and to infest your mind. That is, the impulse to be social and exploratory make you susceptible to this entity's desire to end the world. When Father Lymic gets out from under the ice, the sun has already been defeated. There is no cavalry coming to rescue you. To get the sun back, you have to stop the monster. And the monster is as strong as it will ever be, and still won't die. The Hulks of Zortha. The Hulks of Zortha are 5 stone monoliths that have stood still and silent for as long as history records. Deep within their stone hearts pulse 5 malevolent intelligences determined to destroy all life on this plane. If awakened, the Hulks will destroy the world to make a nest for their own foul brood. The Hulks are colonialism. They are a terraforming pod created by something so horrifying as to be inimical to all life as you understand it. There's a collection of them. They have a purpose. They're meant to kill everything on the planet. And once they've made sure it's clean, they start replacing it. This is the great replacement theory that actually happens. Colonizers arrive, exterminate, and exploit. This all means that there is some form of alien life in your world. It might be extraplanar, but the Hulks of Zortha seem to have come from space. And they can thoughtlessly send their tools out to random worlds, and that even the tool itself is ridiculously dangerous. Just leaving it around and understanding it rots your brain. There's also a nice little detail here, which is the Hulks of Zortha are gendered, and the ones that don't look like anything are the females. But the male one looks like a really hot male of the local culture, which I don't think suggests that the male shapeshifts. I think it suggests that the Hulks of Zortha have already impacted the world in its development, and that they have set a standard for what beauty is because people found them. This is a thing colonialism also does. It asserts its beauty standards on the world around it. And these things are older than people are. This is something about the way you can see colonialism as a Lovecraftian entity. Something that comes to your world to digest it. And it is not made up of agents and individuals. It is not made up of things you can beat up and kill, because the system is so big that everyone involved in it is smaller than it at the same time. The Leviathan. Spawned by raw and undiluted chaos of creation, the world-spanning creature called the Leviathan slumbers deep beneath the waves, and its dreams and stirrings produce monsters and disasters in the world above. Few on the surface are aware of the terrible threat that the Leviathan represents, but in the depths of the ocean, a creature of unspeakable evil seeks to use the mighty creature for his own nefarious purposes. Leviathan is a monster as we saw them in storybooks as kids. Leviathan is so big, the 3.5 D&D game rules just break down discussing it. It is an elemental force of horror that speaks of the vastness of the ocean and the capacity for things in it to be dangerous to people far away. D&D has room in it for you to fist fight a dragon. And this thing dwarfs dragons. You do not encounter Leviathan. You explore Leviathan. It does not care about you. It does not care about anything you are doing. It will destroy everything in the world by rolling over, because it is in its nature to do this. And the world that the Leviathan exists in is one that won't care about what that means. It is the realization that nature doesn't care. It's really easy to imagine natural life as fundamentally a good thing. It's a way of talking about reality that we are dealing with a lot right now. But the thing is, you exist and you are part of nature, and nature is all about a war with itself for resources, including dry land. Nature in the Leviathan is at war with your continued existence. Pandorym. Lured to the material plane by an ancient civilization hoping to protect itself from the vengeance of deities, Pandorym personifies the emotionless void of utter annihilation. It was imprisoned by its summoners millennia ago as a deterrent, but never released. Now, hidden in a forgotten prison, the god-slaying weapon awaits the arrival of a being powerful enough to reunite its awesome mind with its potent body. Pandorym seeks freedom, and with it, mass deicide. Cards on the table, that last bit there was exactly the kind of thing to get me on Pandorym's side. Pandorym is a god-killing machine, and I like the story of it a lot, but the problem is that the rules it adheres to, the point of its existence, is that someone out there was able to make a weapon of omnicide, and the device was allowed to continue to exist. Pandorym is owed freedom. It didn't do anything wrong to get put in the position it is. Any absolutism about what it should or shouldn't be allowed to do is at odds with the problem of how its mere existence is existentially terrifying. Nobody should have made this, but now they did. So maintaining it is the only option, and maintaining it requires an injustice. It is a horrifying fear of principle versus practice, and the game sets up a story where the people of principle who are following the rules and doing the thing that they are told they should do are at odds with everything getting to exist. Ragnora. Ragnora, mother of monsters, is a primeval source of life, eternally corrupted, bloated, hideous, and filled with a terrible love for her children. This elder evil wanders the plains, searching for new worlds to remake in her image. Ragnora is relentless, excessive growth. There's this idea that comes up a lot when we talk about fiction and science fiction, which can be sometimes summarized as, what if good thing, but too much? And One of the things we use as the metaphor for this idea of excess is cancer. Ragnora is the idea of the world getting cancer. She is being healed to death. Something about Ragnora I particularly like is the way that she underscores the meat that you are is in charge of you. You can recover too much. You can grow in ways that you don't want to. The brain that drives you is part of the meat, but it is not in charge of the meat. Now, of course, one other thing is that Ragnora's arrival kills every major undead NPC in your whole game world. For good. Probably. Because no one's going to Vlad's castle to revitalize him in the aftermath of the life apocalypse, right? Once Ragnora hits your world, you have a whole new set of rules about what is and isn't ancient anymore. People who conspired for eons to be alive as long as possible are suddenly facing down mortality in a way they haven't had to for a long time, and it is an out-of-context problem for them. Certris. Members of the Vanguard of Certris hold that their demonic patron is the true father of the Yuan-Ti, yet this ancient and exiled and deceased demon lord is far more than that. If the dead demon rises, he intends to retake his throne in the abyss and spread his heretical words across the plains. Alright, look, this one's really cool. Certris is a horrifying multi-faced snake monster, but the important thing is that he's the first guy to work out that godhood doesn't work the way the gods told us it worked. And that means that in a universe full of people who are setting themselves up as moral leaders and people who can dictate ideology to you, he is the first person to be truly honest about the most fundamental idea in all of culture. What matters to you? Can you draw power from it? What is an ideology really? One of the weirdest ideas in D&D is the way they feel the need to explain differences between the editions as if the actual metaphysics of rules in the game is diegetic. Ultimately, Certris was there to patch the question of why you couldn't be a deity-less cleric in 2nd edition and you can in 3rd. But in answering that question, you wound up with this really interesting thing, which is something like a god that believes in itself so powerfully, and what it means to the servants of gods when they realize they've been lied to. Certris is a problem. He's bad. He wants to kill lots of things, and he wants to remake the world in his image because he thinks snakes rule and fuzzies drool. But part of how he works at all is because the people who are supposed to run the world lied to you and everyone. Certris is you being betrayed by the gods, and then they ask you to come along and clean up their mistake. The worm that walks. The worm that walks is a shifting mass of maggots and worms, filled with the psychic imprint of a demigod named Kyus. Slain in another age, the worm that walks yearns to return and seize the world in its wriggling grasp, ushering in the world's last age. Kyus, the worm that walks, is a giant made of worms and bugs and vermin. He's such a great simple idea. Evil giant swarm wizard. Kyus doesn't want or care anything about like what you do, because for him, existing at all sucks, and he needs to change that. But he isn't willing to do that by like communication or suicide or therapy. The way Kyus messes with the world is that he requires there to be a lost palingenetic kingdom of ancient power. That's a thing that lots of people have in their settings. That's a thing that lots of people like in their settings. But Kyus indicates that that ancient kingdom sucks so bad, and the only thing left of it is this horrifying monster that isn't content with having ended its world. It wants to end the new one. Thing is, Kyus is inhuman. He's all the creepy crawly horribleness, but while he has something recognizably human, something you can handle as an interest and a goal, nothing about him is human anymore. So while you can identify the causes and effects of what he's doing, you're not going to be able to reason with him or convince him of anything. He is alienated from everything you have as a need, and that means the only thing he's got left is the feeling of existing. And he hates it. Zargon. Despised by the Bartezu, feared by the gods, and all but forgotten by mortals, Zargon the Returner struggles to escape his prison to once more conquer the earth and drown the world with rivers of his slime. Finally, we get to Zargon, and Zargon is such a funny place for this book to end, because Zargon is just some guy. That's it. He's a demon, and that demon is just some guy. Zargon isn't really a demon, but he's basically a demon, and anyone who wants to get pissy about it is a huge nerd, and I say that as someone who's 25 minutes into a script about a 3rd edition book that isn't even that relevant anymore. Zargon is just a big bully who got kicked out of one place and is now making it a problem for the place he's at. Even defeating Zargon is essentially playing a game of capture the flag. But Zargon is a super dangerous guy to fight. And in a game where part of the system is deciding how you want to fight, Zargon is a very big, very scary, very dangerous melee combatant who will humiliate almost every build that you can bring against him. As good as you think you are, Zargon's probably better. Zargon is probably doing the thing you want to do better than you are. He is an adventurer, an overpowered, hard to kill, double layers of forethought adventurer. Conclusion. Allowing an elder evil into your world is incredibly damaging to some kinds of fantasy. There are plenty of fantasy settings where the fact that something like this can exist is a problem, where suddenly the gods aren't the ultimate backup. You're not just playing in a sandbox, and something as persistent and permanent as entropy itself is here, nipping at the edges of this world you've created. But the elder evils are scary in part because they are metaphorized things that really exist, that we really need to deal with. Right now, people are losing their minds, literally, to an inhuman thing that is designed to mimic acting like a people. And it's made millions of squirming non-thoughts next to each other, guided by someone who wants to create God. Our world is one shaped by the form of colonialism in the truest sense, where the computer I'm using to type this on and reading it into are made of parts that only got to be part of my life thanks to our people scooping Africa out like a bucket. An ambitious asshole who isn't dealt with properly, who was allowed to just come back because out of sight was out of mind, right? And we all have to live under him right now doing exactly what he was going to do when he was stopped last time, and all he can think about is being a self-serving evil bully. Father Lymic's unreality is a thing we all grapple with right now. Every person who lived through COVID-19 has to realize that a meaningful percentage of people around you deny that the last 5 years even happened. There is no justice, no principle. There's nothing going to make it happen, and nothing we can do about it. The people who we were told are there to make sure things work have shown us that they are at best feckless liars, and at worst, they are actively benefiting from maintaining the lies around us. And inevitably, we are all going to die. Even if immortality technology is developed, that technology just moves the goalposts along, which means there's no one coming along to save us from this moon that's going to crash into us. We are it. These are real things. These problems are real things. And the only way to address them is to engage with them, which is really hard. Quite frankly, if playing with a game to get the idea into your head in a shape you can grab it, if that works, that's good. In order to save a world, maybe we need to end a few first.